everybody. Welcome to the daily self-publishing podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Sutton. Today, I have a very special guest named Katti Power. And Katti spent over 20 years in the entertainment industry before bringing her performance coaching to a larger audience. She is the creator of the Total Vocal Health System and the Power Master Performance Method. She is the international best-selling author of Turns Out I'm Hot After All. Ms. Power, how are you doing?
I am great, Jeremy. How are you?
I am doing amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I can't wait to talk about your book. And the first thing I have to ask is, where did you come up with that title?
Well, it's very clear in the book, but it really is about my process. So my book is a lot about empowering women. I was in a marriage that was, I don't know that I realized how bad it was till I got out of it, but the main problems that I had inside my marriage were that I didn't feel lovable and I didn't feel desirable and sexy or any of those kinds of things. And, you know, physical intimacy was not something that happened in my marriage. And we were in and out of counseling because of that, trying to figure out why. I couldn't figure out why. I thought something was wrong with me. And I spent my whole marriage trying to figure out what I could do to make him want me and desire me and love me and all of those things. And as soon as he left, I did a lot of work on myself. And in the process, I realized, what do you know? I guess I'm not unlovable. I guess I'm not undesirable. I didn't know this, So yeah, it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me, getting out into the world of being available and also just kind of believing in myself in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So is your book your kind of your story of self-discovery and really reintroducing you to you?
Yeah. So my subtitle of my book is How I Got My Power Back After a Breakup, because my whole sense of self and sense of identity just kind of went in some kind of downward spiral during my marriage. And I started actually because I started working with a business coach who I just absolutely adore for my business. And she saw a lot of potential in me. And, she kept trying to get me to come out of my shell and different things and starting to recognize who I am and own my power and all this kind of stuff. And I think in the middle of that, he was kind of like, I can't control her anymore. So I'm out. I think that's kind of what happened. And but I had started that work right before he left me. And so then when he left, I just picked up where I left off. And
Sure. Yeah. I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and tell the people that are listening two key things that you already told me. In the pre-interview, you said you had an author coach that helped you with your book, who you loved, Vicky Gould. And then you just said you have a business coach. So I want to tell you guys listening right now, if you want to be successful in your book, in your business, get coaches.
Absolutely.
Would you agree?
100%. That my whole first chapter of my book is about that.
I love it. Also, I want to give another little piece of advice. If you can work your name into the title and it's really cool, like Katti did, do it, because she got her power back and her name is Katti Power. So I absolutely love that.
Yes. Thanks. Yeah. That's part of the reason why, you'll learn this in my book too, that I did change my name to that. But part of the reason I did is because I use that word all the time in my work. Because everything I do, whether they're singers or whether they're working in an executive in some kind of company, I'm helping them power up, get their power. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So you worked 20 years helping singers and people get on Broadway, and I saw all your credentials are just amazing. You've helped people win international awards and U.S. awards and things like that. And you're a speaker. And so now you went from there to writing this book. How does all of that kind of coincide and work together for your business?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's actually interesting because when I first got the idea to write this book, it was going to be just a fun little trip down my, experience of being separated and re-entering the dating world and online dating in my 40s at a pandemic. That's what it was going to be about. And then I had this kind of aha moment. Wait a minute. I followed my own steps in order to heal. And this could be really powerful if I turn this around and use the information that I use with my clients. If I share how I followed those steps in order to get my own power back, this could be really powerful and help a lot of other people. And so that's when I got the idea that kind of created a sense of urgency for me in terms of writing it and getting it out there, because I realized, yes, it is, there's a whole lot of relationship stuff in it, but it's also completely about my system and my process and how I work with clients. And so it works with my book. And one of my goals was to use the book to book speaking gigs, to use the book to get more clients into my world.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And, we talked about this pre-interview is, that's what I do. I help people write books and grow their business and get speaking engagements and all that, because I really don't think that there's anything better to get you to that authority level or expert
Absolutely.
level than a book. And I don't think I didn't just come up with that over here on my whiteboard one day. It's a proven method,
Yeah.
whether you look at Tony Robbins or Dave Ramsey or whoever you want to talk about. It seems to me those are always the two names that come to mind when I'm doing these podcasts. But there's a reason, because they have books and they're speakers and they have these massive businesses. So you talked about you hit international bestseller like before you even got out of bed.
Yes.
So talk about that. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, one of the things that my coach does in our program is help us, strategize and plan the launch of our book so that we can reach bestsellers. She helps us, figure out how to be strategic in marketing it throughout the whole whatever. So people knew about it. And I had been, she said, be spammy this week. So I was as spammy as I could be with my audience in terms of making sure they knew, hey, it's Sunday, it's Valentine's Day, this is happening. And then I gave my assistant was going to change my banner to be like available now instead of saying, available on Valentine's Day. And
Sure.
she did that before she went to bed. And I didn't know that. And so I was planning on having sort of like this big formal, okay, go for it. It's open now. It's available. But because she did that at midnight, and I'm in Pacific time, and so all the people in Europe and on the East Coast and Central Time and Mountain Time bought my book before I got up. So I woke up to a message from my author coach at like 6:30 in the morning saying, look, you're already number 2 here, number 7 here. And this was at 6:30 in the morning. It's like, oh my God. I was not expecting that. And before noon, I was number 1 in 6 different categories in the US, and number 2 in Canada. Number 2 in Canada came at the end of the day, but I was number 3 in Canada for most of the day. And then it moved up to number 2.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so I like what you talked about. Like y'all put the book everywhere on Amazon, like Canada, Australia, Europe,
India.
US. Yeah, India, everywhere. I love that, because I think that's something that maybe many authors, especially self-published authors, don't think about. Like, well, hey, we're going to just put it in the US. Well, there's still other, billions of other people in the world that want to read your book,
Yes.
So why not tap into that? Especially when you have the number 1 book salesman, Amazon, working for you.
Yeah,
I love that. I love it. So what did you feel like when you woke up that morning and you were like, oh my gosh, my book's already top 10?
The word I've been using for the past 4 days is surreal. The whole process, well, and that's not even the past 4 days. Like when I first submitted it to my editor for the first round, I was like, oh my God, this is real, and then when I got it back from her, like the official manuscript, and then when I uploaded it to Amazon, I was like, oh my God, this is real, and then then when it was live on there, I'm like, oh my God, this is surreal was kind of the ongoing feeling. And, even still saying it today, like today, I just got it formatted for print, and it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. Actually, one of my clients sent me a message on Monday morning. And it just, I don't think I've ever smiled so big in my life. But he said, okay, so 2-time world champion coach and international best-selling author. What next, coach?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
exactly.
I just laughed at him, and I was like, wow, I don't know, but challenge accepted.
Yeah. One thing I think that authors don't think about, especially people that are self-publishing, because one, there's this stigma. I don't think it's big anymore, but people used to think, well, you're a self-published author, that's not as good as a traditional published author. But that is completely false.
Absolutely.
Because you look at people like, let's say Pat Flynn, for instance, who has an amazing podcast, Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn. He has millions of downloads a month. And he has traditional published a book, but it's because he self-published it and he sold so many books that a traditional publisher's like, hey, we want to get in on this too. Here's some money.
Absolutely.
Can we publish your book? And so it's not you're not the stepchildren of the publishing industry anymore. You can have just as much clout and just as much authority with a self-published book as you can with a traditional published. And in many ways, I think it's better because you control your book. You're not giving rights to anyone.
No, I think that's way better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had a coach, and that's what I do as well. I coach people to write books, but like she didn't. I don't take any royalties. I'm assuming that they don't. Like they're just helping you get through the process, and then it's still your book, and you still get to say, no, we don't want to do that. That's my book. This because it's my baby. One of my clients this week, she finally got her print copy today, and she hit number one. Not, it's, to me, it seems pretty easy to hit number one new release, but to hit number one bestseller is a little bit different.
Exactly.
And so she hit number one in multiple categories in Canada and the US. And it's like, I've never written a book before, and now I'm a number one bestseller. I'm like,
that's exactly what happened to me. So I said 6, but it's really that it was 3. It was new releases and bestseller in 3 different categories. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's amazing. And
blew my mind.
She put a picture today and she was like, I'm holding my baby, because it's you put all this effort into a book, and you kind of shove it out of the nest and hope it'll fly. And when it doesn't, it stinks. And when it does, though, it's an amazing feeling. And you said your client called you and said, hey, world championship coach, international bestseller, what else? Well, guess what? You inspired the heck out of that person. Like now they're going to step their game up because of what you just did. They're going to power up. So
absolutely,
gosh, I love it. I get excited about talking about this. So it's like 9:30 here where I am, and it's like, let's talk about it. So talk about your book, why you wrote it, things like that. How are you using it to grow your business? I know it just came out Sunday, like literally just a few days ago. You're already international bestseller. How are you planning on using that to further your business?
Yeah. So I'm planning on using that title and the fact that I have a book to book speaking gigs, to book gigs on podcasts, to get in the door in companies, because it gives you an extra level of clout and credibility. Plus, in addition to that, one of the things that was encouraged for us in this program that I went through was to make sure that you are, I love how she called it like sneaking in the vegetables, that your book, she says, memoir is the death of your business book. So don't write a memoir. And so there's a whole lot of strategy in the book about the correlation of my story with my business and my system and my coaching system and what I do with clients. And so making the how-to in the book correlate to my story and putting little opportunities for readers to opt into something so I have their email address, since you don't really get that on Amazon. So those are some of the ways that I'm using it to help further my business.
Sure. I love that. So you talk about getting the book on, my goodness, my brain just stopped working. Turns out I'm hotafterall.com, correct? So when you go have someone go
it's just turnsoutimhot.com.
Turnsoutimhot.com. Sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
Turnsoutimhot.com. We'll have it listed in the show notes. But when you have someone go to that website, are you collecting their email address on your website? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Because If you're not, please do it. I knew the answer to that, but
Yes.
if you're listening to this and you have your book on your website and you're not collecting emails, gosh, please do that. Even we set up for someone one time to go to Amazon. Like, they didn't have it set up to sell on their, this is someone when I had an online course at one time, they didn't have it set up to sell on their website, but we still got their email because we added in a PDF or something extra, a lead magnet. And then after they gave us their email address, then it goes to Amazon. They could have gone to Amazon anyway, but since they came to our website, we're going to take your stuff.
Yeah. And I peppered those throughout my book. So like,
amazing.
In the very, how there's the look inside that shows up after your launch. On my first little copyright page, I have a little free gift. Thanks for buying my book. And
yeah, absolutely. So, we did that. I wrote a book. My first book was about neck pain. And then a friend of mine who's a physical therapist as well, we wrote it together, changed the name of it, changed everything. But on the, look inside is where our lead magnet was.
Absolutely.
Because I'm like, I don't care if they don't want to read the book, that's great. But if they say, hey, you can get all the information from this, well, then we still got their email address.
Exactly. Even if they don't buy it, they can still, you still get their email address. That's all I cared about. So
I love it. There's a little pro tip for you guys listening to the podcast. Yeah. Put the lead magnet where they preview the book on Amazon and you still get the email address.
Even if they don't buy your book, because there's no money I shouldn't say this. It's not that there's no money. There can be, but the money isn't designed to be in the book sales. It's designed in the way that you use the book to get your clients into your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. Absolutely, you can make money with books and run ads and do things like that. And there's all these methods and frameworks to do, but the money is in the other things, the follow-up, the back end, coaching, consulting, speaking, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you 100%. Katie, could you just give us a few tips, to the people listening, what could you say about, hey, this is how you get your book done or market or launch, whatever you want to talk about?
Yeah, a couple things. Number one for me is make sure you get a coach. I'm a huge fan of getting a coach for kind of anything, which if you read my book, you'll learn in my first chapter how passionately I feel about that. But an author coach is going to give you not just the inside tips of how to market it and all of that, but also even the structure for writing it, which I think would be my number two. Make sure you don't just sit down and write, have a structure, have an outline, know where you're going. I will say that the one thing that I say all the time about my experience with my coach and what we did is that what she gave me in terms of a structure made my book feel like a fill in the blank.
Yeah.
It's not. Every book that she helps some people write is different, but it felt like a fill in the blank because it was so easy once I had that structure, once I knew exactly what to write and when and where. The third thing I would say as far as writing is make sure that you tell stories. Don't let it feel like a textbook. Pepper it with stories throughout. You can't tell too many stories. You just can't. And something else, this is going to be, dependent upon personality, but know who you are and what your style is. I am someone who so I'm a workaholic. Let's just be real.
Me too.
I'm not big on taking breaks in any area of my life. And so once I had my outline and my structure, I was like, okay, I'm just going to knock this out in a weekend. Now, I didn't succeed in doing it in one weekend, but it was about 2.5 weekends.
There you go.
And that's okay. Some people don't work best in the whole just write 10 minutes a day thing. I'm not that person because I found that I had to reread what I wrote in order to remember where I am so that I can be in my same vibe so I can keep going. So for me, it worked better to just set aside a chunk of time and just do it. And on that topic, my last tip would be this. A lot of times people say they don't want to write their book because they think it's going to take too long. And something that my coach says that I think is brilliant is if you don't have time to write your book, that's exactly why you need to write it. Because if you don't have a coach helping you, you're going to take years and years and years and you'll never write it. But when you have a structure, when you get some help with that, then the reason that you don't have time becomes the reason that you write the book, because that much sooner that you're able to use that to boost your business.
Absolutely. You know, I have a client right now who paid someone, I don't know how much money, to help him with his book, and it never got done. And I don't know what the reasons were or anything, but I know that now he pays me to help him with his book, and we're sending it to the editor next week. So it's, you know, it's done for all intents and purposes. We just have to have it edited and then, you know, make changes. But it's I don't understand how you can take somebody's money and not deliver the product you say. But two, I 100% agree with that last point is, you know, if you don't have time, write your book, because you have something to say. Somebody's going to benefit. Yes. Like you said, you've already inspired, you know, you had one of your clients call you like, oh my gosh, what's next, coach? You know, people need that. And if you've been called to that kind of life or have that power to do that for people, then you should. So I love these 5 points. Get a coach, have a structure, tell stories, know who you are and what your style is, and then write your book even if you don't have time. You know, it's funny. I have one of my friend's books. I always have a book in my hand. And I want to just read you the title of some of his chapters. Yeah. If you ain't first, you're last. Let's see. You need to think about what you're doing. Where do you want to be? Invite the paparazzi. It's showbiz, baby. I am the captain. Be like Mike. Play ball. You know, like, because and this is a mindset book for mobile entrepreneurs, but it's his personality, and every chapter has a story.
Yes.
You know, and then he teaches off of that story.
Yes.
It's such an interesting book. And I'll be honest with you, I don't read, you know, every word of every book that I work on, but I read every single word of that book as we're editing it and all this stuff. And it's just, I love that you say, you know who you are and tell your story, because you can't be someone else. I read a book a long time ago by Chuck Swindoll, who's a Southern Baptist pastor. I love Chuck Swindoll. His voice just makes me feel amazing. It reminds me of my grandfather. And so I was reading his book, and talks about how he would try to preach like someone else, you know, Billy Graham or something. Mm-hmm. But then later, I think it was his brother was going off to the military, and he said, you know, Chuck, be who you are. And it was like just sparked. Yes, I'm not gonna write the book that you would write, Katie, or it's not gonna be you're not gonna have my voice, because we're not the same people. So you have to be true to who you are, and it comes back to, you know, I'm hot after all. Like, you have to be true to who you are and realize that you have something to offer people.
Yes,
I love it. Awesome. So listen, success leaves clues. I don't know who said that. Some amazing person, you know, copied it from 10 other people. So what kind of things have you kind of gleaned from this process that you would say, hey, if you want to be successful, I know we just gave some amazing tips, but if you want to be really successful, really, really focus on these things.
Yeah. One of the other things that I did, which I don't know, my other coach says all the time, just write until you're done and then go back and, you know, clean it. Don't write and go back and write and go back. And I can't say that I followed that advice, even though I should have, and I think it's excellent advice. So don't do as I did.
Do as I say.
Yes. But one thing that did help me in the end, so one of the little opt-in freebie thing that I gave on my copyright page that's in the look inside is a free audio of the book. And I recorded myself reading the book. And I think the coolest part for me about that, and this is something that I did throughout, just to make sure that I was staying in my voice and that I didn't sound like some kind of somebody else. I wanted to make sure it sounded like me. But one of the coolest things that happened in that process was, while I was reading it, I found myself like gesturing and, you know, being totally in, like I'm speaking off the cuff, but I was reading. And I was like, okay, this is obviously so me, that I can do that while I'm reading a book. I can act like I'm, you know, just saying thoughts, stream of consciousness or something. And I think it is important to test it and make sure that it sounds like you. I will say that is the feedback that I keep getting from people is, I can't put it down. It sounds just like you. It's so readable. Yeah. And I think those are qualities that you want to look for in your writing. And to me, the way to make sure that you're on track with that is to periodically read it out loud.
Yeah.
And I would record it on my phone every once in a while and I'd never played it back. I just, I don't know why I recorded it, but I guess to see how long it was. And yeah.
I love that. It's funny you say you're gesturing. I sat down one night and I had on my Fitbit, and it was like I sat down to do, I think I did 3 podcasts that night or 2, and I had 8,000 steps, and I feel my arm vibrate, and I look down and I had 10,000 steps at the end of the podcast. I'm like, man, I swing my arms wildly like a crazy person when I talk. So I absolutely love that. I wasn't going to ask you about that, but since you brought it up, let's talk about it. You did the audiobook version. Yeah. So is that something, did y'all put that on Audible, or did you strategically hold that back and put that in the book?
Yeah, not yet. I'm doing my Audible next, but I did strategically put it in my book for my look inside as a little freebie to capture an email. But I am planning to do an Audible, and I'm also planning to do a course on how to record your own Audible for your book.
I love it.
Because that's what I do. I'm a performance coach, and that kind of thing is my jam. So
you are my people, Katie. I love that.
Well, I will say I'm a huge Audible fan, but some of those voice actors are terrible. There's a book that I'm going to have to get the actual book because I really wanted to read it while I was getting stuff done, but I cannot stand the guy who's reading it. He's so bad that I was like, so I want to start, getting some of those, credentials too, but I'm going to read my own for sure.
I love that. One of my favorite things for authors is to read their book, because I actually have another book that I listen to, and I bought it off of a funnel on Facebook or something. And it's an amazing book. And it's about what I do. It's about coaching people to write books to grow their business. And the guys, I think he's had about 12 to 15 people that he's made millionaires with a book. And it's an amazing book. But then I love the guy's voice who reads it. And I was hoping it was the author. And then later I listened to the author's podcast. I was like, oh, I can't listen to him because I've been listening to this other guy, even though it's his book. But I love, I listened to one of Grant Cardone's books, I think 10X. And I love it because he stops in the book and tells extra stories because it's him reading it.
Yes.
And so I think that's something that, listeners, you can pick up on this as well. If you can read your own book, it is, oh my gosh, because it builds that personal connection with you and the reader, which is what you want because you want to be the expert and the authority.
Yes. I will say the first one that I read that was actually read by the author was, listened to was Jen Sincero's You're a Badass. She reads her own book. And that was my first time getting an Audible that was narrated by the author. And that was where I was like, okay, if I ever write a book, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to help other people do it too, because I think there's an art to it, just like writing in your own language and writing in the way you talk, making sure that you read something the way that you talk is an art as well.
I feel sorry for the people that listen to my book that I read because not everybody can understand Louisiana redneck. But it's me. So anyway, Katie, you have about 12 websites. Where can people go to find
Well, the best place to go to find my book is turnsoutimhot.com. And if you want to find more about me, I'm going to tell you katiepower.com, but I'm also going to tell you, make sure you look in the notes for that one because I do not spell my name like you think I would. So it's KATTIPOWER.com.
That's right. Katie, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely.